Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Kish Podcast. I'm Tony Scott.
And I'm Emer McCormack.
This week we speak to somebody in the political field.
We do indeed, Tony. She is the leader of Sinn Féin and her name is Mary Lou McDonald.
And we started off by finding out, who is Mary Lou McDonald?
Do you ever really know fully and exactly and precisely who you are? That's kind of a lifelong mission, isn't it, and journey. So here's the vital statistics. So I'm a Dub. I was born in Holles Street Hospital. I'm therefore a Southsider, although I live on the North Side. I married a North Sider, so we're a mixed marriage, he and I. Grew up in Dublin on the South Side, went to school in Churchtown. I have two brothers and one sister who are wonderful. Went to university at Trinity, then went on to University of Limerick and Dublin City University. I was doing the world tour of Irish universities. Had a happy childhood, liked my books, liked learning, loved my friends. My parents separated when I was quite young, in 1979. Actually, it was the year the Pope came. And the month, it was in the September. So in the Ireland of that time, that kind of marked you out as a bit different because people didn't separate and that awful term used to be used to describe families like mine. You know, that term broken families, which is truly obnoxious, and I'm glad has been consigned to the dustbin of history. So, I mean, as a child, and we had our ups and our downs, you know, that was a testing kind of situation. But all in all, I had a happy time. I grew up in a house that I suppose was political with a large P. Like, I'm the first person in my family to have ever run for public office, to have been elected. So I don't come from any kind of dynastic situation or anything like that. And despite what many of my many commentators might say and talking about how posh I am, because apparently I'm the poshest person to ever walk on Irish soil, according to some. I'm not wealthy, I never have been, but I had the very, very good fortune and I suppose the privilege, if you want to use that word, of being very well educated. My mother saw to that. I've been elected to the European Parliament, to the Dáil. I'm the leader of Sinn Féin now. I'm only the second woman to lead our party in the party's existence. So I'm finding my way on that. I love my work. I love the people that I represent. I love my family. I love my friends. I love a good laugh. I love an open fire. I hate litter and I hate derelict buildings. Oh, and I love dogs.
Tell me a little bit about your husband. What is his name and where did you meet him?
His name is Martin and I met him in Peter's pub. You know, they're on the corner.
Lovely spot.
Yeah, grand spot. Now, the only thing was I met him during Italia 90. Do you remember Italia 90? Too young.
I do remember.
We're both way too young.
Yeah,
well,
okay, that's right.
We're both born in 1982, so I do remember Italia 90.
Yeah. Well, I was born slightly earlier than 1982. So anyway, I met him in there, and there was a match on, and you know the way some men go, "Oh, referee," you know, this Martin's one of those. So I said, that man's actually going to give himself a heart attack to carry on of him. So anyway, he was friends of mine and we met that way and we clicked from the word go. He goes mad when I do this, so I'm going to do it again. He's older than me, which is great because it means even as I advance in years, I'm always young. I'm always younger, which is actually a great move on my part now, reflecting on it. But he's a bit older than me, so it's mad actually that we even met because the likelihood was more that we wouldn't meet, if you follow me, than that we did. So it was kind of by chance. We had friends in common and we clicked, and we are, at the end of this month, we will be married 24 years.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations indeed. And what does he do for a living? Is he in politics or what does he do?
Oh God, no, Jesus, no. I mean, he's political, don't get me wrong, and he's very, very supportive, but he's not as politically involved as I am. I'm not sure. Maybe I know it's different from family to family and from couple to couple, but that would be, I'm not sure that would be a great thing for me. I like the fact that when I come home and I close the door, I kind of have another life intact, if you know what I mean, my family and all of that. Now, he's hugely supportive. he comes out and he campaigns and he does, a bit of activism and legwork for Sinn Féin. But no, I'm kind of the political one in the family. He works for Networks Ireland, which was Bord Gáis. He's working there a long time. Everyone who's ever worked there knows him. Martin Lanigan, he's one of the old stock. And yeah, that's it.
How many children do you have and what are their ages?
I have 2 kids. I have my first child is a girl. Her name is Isolt. Actually, she's a young woman. She'll be 17 this summer. And then my baby is my son, Garrod. He is 14. So
14.
That's it.
Is there much debating going on around the kitchen table on a given evening?
The children obviously are growing up in a political household, and we're Irish Republicans, and we're people who believe in social justice and equality. Like, that's who we are. So you hope and you imagine that kind of thinking and those values are kind of absorbed by your children, that it's part of kind of their DNA too. And so far, I think it is, but they certainly have their own ideas about just about everything. And if you think that I get it hard at times in the Dáil, you haven't seen anything. I mean, they really put me through my paces. The kids, in particular, they're, if they think something is a load of cobblers, they're not a bit slow about telling me.
Teenagers have their own opinions on everything now. Like, do they ever disagree with stuff that you say?
Constantly. I mean, it is a rare and joyous occasion when they actually agree with me. You see, what I find, like with my own kids, and I think this is probably true of their generation, you see things that are a big deal for modern, for contemporary politics. So let me take an example, marriage equality, and that's a couple of years ago. How long are we now since that? 3 years?
15.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's more. So they were younger, they were much younger then, and they couldn't get their head around what this was all about. Like, they thought it was just insane that there had to be a referendum to decide whether or not gay people would have the same rights as everybody else. So I had to kind of explain to them, the world isn't just as you would wish it to be, or what you think is sensible or right. Sometimes there are things that have to be taken on. So generationally, they have a whole different outlook. And I know kids get a bit of flack for being, snowflakes and overly touchy and not hard chores like we were when we walked to school barefoot uphill both ways, that kind of line of argument. I actually think that's unfair. I think young people and teenagers are absolutely brilliant. I mean, their independence of thought, the fact that they actually think about how they feel and that comes naturally to them, I think is absolutely brilliant. I really enjoy that. But yeah, the short answer is they have their own ideas. They threaten sometimes to join Fine Gael, which causes little tears down their mummy's face. Don't do it, children, don't. But they're good crack, and we've great fun generally. We also have our moments of tension, the same as every family now in lockdown. It's we have our moments, but they're great. I mean, this is my sanctuary, and my family and my children are my most precious and my most proud achievements, if I can claim them as that.
Thinking about yourself, Mary Lou, what are your own hobbies outside of working life?
To tell you the God's honest, you get very little time. Do you know what I mean? My life is very, very busy. You're on the go constantly. Political life is such that you can't kind of just very neatly clock on or clock off. I suppose it's like other jobs too, like, if you're needed, you're needed. If you have to be somewhere, you have to be somewhere. So it is all absorbing, as they say. It's not just a job. It's a lifestyle. It becomes your practically your whole life. So when I'm not working, I like to be at home. So being at home is my kind of going out, if you know what I mean. And so I like to be at home. I like to have the time just to do the simple things. And actually, I'm getting more space to do it, So I like to cook when I get the time. I like reading. What
do you like to read?
Well, pretty much anything. I'm dipping back into Wuthering Heights. I studied literature as a student. That was my primary degree. So I've got a great book collection. So I dip in and out of just about everything, anything that kind of distracts me. I like reading dramas. So I love Beckett, although it's can make for demanding reading. So just about everything. And then I like what they call chick lit. Now I know authors of this genre despise the term chick lit, but I like Marion Keyes, and I read kind of a selection of everything. But for me, it's the question of actually making the time, just actually clearing the space to do it. So to be honest with you, if I have a half an hour, to myself, the most likely thing I would do to unwind would be to put on my trainers and go out and walk, even around my neighbourhood, like do a lap or two of the block, just to manage stress or just to,
Are you able to do something like that without being stopped?
Yes, believe it or not, most times. Depends on what's going on, depends what the weather is like. But yeah, I mean, out in my own neighbourhood, there is always, you run into people and people want to talk and all of this. But it depends what time of the day you go at. But generally, like where I live and where my children and my families, like we're part of the furniture. So it's no great novelty to see me out and about the place. So the neighbours would say hello, you'd have a bit of a chat, but it's not like they see anything,
So they see you as Mary Lou, the neighbour, rather than Mary Lou,
absolutely. We're part and parcel of the community here. Absolutely, yeah.
And do you get many people knocking into your door, like, and asking you questions in your own private home?
Sometimes, but my experience of that is, I think that's kind of overstated. That's just my experience. Maybe other TDs have people beating a pathway to their house, but it's happened sometimes, but in circumstances of extreme need or urgency. It's very, very unusual. I've two constituency offices, one here in Cabra and the other in the inner city. We work as a team. We have councillors, we have constituency workers who are fabulous. So it's not like, the way sometimes you hear this, you could be called on Christmas Day or New Year's Eve at like 10 to 12 and someone's on about something. I mean, something extraordinary would have had to happen for that. So now I find people fairly brilliant, actually, in terms of giving you a bit of space, even if you're out with the children, or if I'm out with Martin, or, if we're out doing something with the family. Most people, they say hello or give you a wave or give you a smile or give you a scowl or whatever, depending. But most people are very, very respectful of the fact that you're out with your family. And it's one of the good things, I think, as Irish people, we don't have this big thing around, oh my God, that's someone from the television. And like if Matt Damon, I'll put it to you this way, if Matt Damon can knock around with his super value bag, I think I'm fairly safe.
Wasn't that such a brilliant story of the locals being really protective about him?
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
And fending off all the reporters and everything. It was just brilliant. But I think that is Irish people to the core. Leave them be. They're grand.
But they're with their family. He's with his family. He's with his children and his wife. Leave them alone. Leave them off. I love the fact that we're like that. I think it's great.
Yeah.
It is great. And Mary Lou, on a very serious note, how are you coping without your hairdresser at the moment?
Well, I'm going to let the peer review be best judge. Absolutely terrible. I have two left hands. So, I mean, to kind of get you see, if you ever see me now during lockdown and my hair looks anyway, halfway decent, I want you to give me a little boulibus, even in the quietness of your own mind. It probably means that I convinced my daughter, I bribed her to do something with my hair. It's just a nightmare. I mean, can I say to hairdressers everywhere, we love you. We appreciate you deeply.
True.
And we will never take you for granted again. I can envisage queues at hairdressers everywhere once they reopen,
Absolutely. It's definitely going to be their boom time for probably about 3 or 4 months.
Normally, I've a very nice styled head of hair, but I thought I can't deal with long hair over 3 months. So I thought, no, get me a clipper. And then I noticed this and I thought that's my father's fault.
Lovely hair. You've got a red hair. That's what my mother would call foxy hair.
Oh,
foxy
is it?
Colored
Foxy.
Hair. Yeah. Foxy
I like
hair.
that.
You're foxy.
I'll use that from now on.
That can be your new nickname now, Tony, Foxy. Tell me, Mary Lou, are you a GAA fan?
I am. Now, I don't get to as many matches as I would like, so I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool Dub supporter that is out through thick and thin all season long, but I love the football. I like hurling. My mother is a Tipperary woman, so we would have grown up supporting or following Tipperary hurling and Dublin football, because there wasn't, or my mother told us, no, don't mind, your Dubs don't play hurling, which I know now is a big lie. So yeah, I love those sports. My son plays a lot with our local GAA club. He's a fairly handy hurler. So yeah, it's part of kind of the family routine here as well, training sessions and matches and all of that. And then Croke Park on an All-Ireland Sunday when it's 5 in a row. The place is packed. I mean, there's absolutely nothing like it. And it's hard to imagine that we're not going to have all of that magic and enthusiasm and all of that this year. But hopefully by next season, we'll be out of this. I hope, although none of us can be sure. Let's be honest.
That's what I was going to ask you. How do you feel about Dublin not making it 6 in a row and then Mayo coming in next year to lift Sam?
No. So what was the slogan? Dublin for Sam, Mayo for Sambos. Now my friends from Mayo said that is outrage. They were absolutely outraged. So all Mayo listeners, I apologise. If it's any comfort, my paternal grandmother was from Westport, so I can claim a little bit of Mayo blood. I think the great magic of the GAA really is unparalleled. And don't get me wrong, people of all sporting codes, I mean, it's just soccer, rugby, all of them, brilliant organisations, brilliant codes and brilliant sportsmanship and sportswomanship as well. But the GAA has something special. And in the neighbourhood that I live in, the GAA isn't just a sporting organisation. It's so embedded in everything, in community, in, the older folks, the kids, everything. It's like a wee hub in the community. So it's brilliant. But 6 in a row, it might be just a delay for the Dubs to do.
We'll see.
Sounds like a challenge.
It does. We'll see.
So I get to play referee here.
You can play referee. No, but I think you're dead right. The GAA is just an amazing organisation, and the people involved in it. I think what's great about the organisation as well, like you mentioned, is the fact that it's everybody of all creeds, of all ages, just get involved in any way, shape or form, from fundraising to, at the moment with COVID-19, dropping into elderly people, dropping off food. Like that's just so unique. And it's amazing that we have this army throughout the country of people willing to do that. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And, it's often said, and it always sounds, it sounds a bit cliched, and, it sounds almost like we're tapping each other on the back and saying, oh, we're wonderful. But we are pretty wonderful, and people across the island are incredible. And when it's put up to people and to communities and families, when people's backs are to the wall, we come up trumps. And I think it's just a great thing to remind ourselves of. The people are fundamentally good and decent, and are prepared to go the extra mile and to forgo things themselves, to keep their families safe, to keep their communities safe. I mean, there's great compassion in people and great decency in people. And we're not perfect, and we never will be. We shouldn't pretend that we are, but we should really give ourselves great credit. I mean, a lot has been said about our frontline workers and nurses and doctors and cleaners and porters and cooks and everybody who's keeping the health services in particular, but also people working in retail, in supermarkets and in our shops and our pharmacies. We will maybe never really fully repay their forbearance during this time, the risks that they took, to ensure that everybody else could do their shopping and feed their families, or those that care for people who are sick. I mean, they're incredible people, incredible, extraordinary, ordinary people. Brilliant. Absolutely. That's a great thing about, by the way, Emer, about political life and public life, is the really, really interesting and rewarding part of it for me, and I can only speak for myself, I guess, is the fact that people let you in. You meet and you gain the confidence of so many people. You're invited into people's lives, into their homes. And even though people are quite cynical about politics, I mean, to be frank, I'm cynical at some of it myself, but notwithstanding that, there still is that great bond when people elect you to represent them. And to me, that's an incredible honour without sounding cliched about it, but it genuinely is.
You love to embrace people. I've noticed you recently, well, not recently, from afar, at the last general election. You know, you were hugging people. I mean, that seems alien right now, right? But, you know, and people love that. They love a hug. They love a chat and a serious chat, a laugh, you know, a bit of crack, whatever it is. But do you think that that's something that is important to you, to embrace people? Absolutely.
I'm the kind of person, my mammy tells me I was born in the sunshine and smile. I used to smile up at her, beam up at her from my breath. I smile as saying hello to people. I like people. I'm not, now don't get me wrong, I can be formal if I have to be, but it's not my natural self. Mm-hmm. And I love meeting people. When I'm out and about, I sort of like to get up close and hear what people, and really, really meet people properly. And I don't think you meet somebody properly unless it's a very official occasion where you're called upon to be, you know, to put your official hat on. That's one thing. But in real life and out and about with people, you don't really meet somebody by shaking their hand, really. You know, not really. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I find that whatever about me hugging people like to hug. You know, that people like to a friendly approach. So I've said very often to people within our own party, and that our job is to improve people's lives, and that includes, when you can, putting a smile on somebody's face. Like, political people shouldn't be going around putting years on people. Like, people have enough to contend with. We should be aiming to bring, you know that bit in the proclamation that talks about the happiness of the nation. We should. I'm a great believer in that. If you can cheer somebody up, if you can give somebody a lift, it's easier to smile than to scowl. It's easier to be friendly and to embrace somebody than to give them a brush off. So I suppose I believe in greeting people and talking to people in a way that I would like to be greeted and welcomed and engaged with.
Do you think Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin need a hug?
They probably do. They're not getting a hug from me, John. That's not a chance in your arm.
So you've never hugged them?
No. And I imagine it would cause major alarm, you know? Like, God knows who they'd call in if I attempted. Well, I couldn't now anyway. But if I attempted to hug either of them, I'd say it could be a cause for
I'd love to see that
alarm.
I'd love to see that, though. Imagine the crack that would be. That would actually be very funny. Yeah. You spoke about Ireland there and you mentioned it quite often. So where is your favourite place to go to relax in Ireland outside of Dublin?
I said to you that my mammy's from Tipperary, so we would always, as a child, I mean, I spent all my childhood summers in the Glen of Aherlow in Tipperary, so that's very much home from home. I love going down and bring the children, and don't get there enough, but I love there. Outside of that, I love Sligo. I love every part of Sligo. I absolutely love Sligo, but I love Donegal as well. So I'm sometimes, when you need to get out, I love Wexford, and it's only a hop, a skip and a jump. As you know, all Dubs love Wexford. I'm not sure Wexford loves all Dubs. So yeah, I mean, you're the great thing about living on a small island is you can get anywhere, fairly quickly. I love Belfast and Derry, Tyrone. I love that part of kind of North Louth, South Armagh. It's absolutely gorgeous up there. So you're kind of spoiled for choice. But if you said you can choose one place outside of Dublin and I would say Sligo.
So not Mayo, Sligo, just to be clear.
I know Mayo's beautiful as well.
I knew you'd say that.
Tony, I was itching to say it, but I just said I'd say it. And then outside of Ireland for your summer holidays, where do you go, or do you go?
We go, yeah. I love the sunshine. I think the stork took the wrong turn. I actually believe I should have been delivered to the Mediterranean. It's been a horrible mistake. Sadly, there's no going back now. But yeah, I like Spain. I love Italy. So those would be kind of our places of choice, you know. Sunshine, we like the Canaries. The Canary Islands are lovely. And we go over and back. Generally, when the kids were coming up, we go to the same place year in and year out in Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands. Absolutely gorgeous there.
Lovely spot. I love Fuerteventura.
Yeah, it's a great out spot. So yeah, anywhere where it's sunny. But now that we have older kids, we have vowed to be a bit more adventurous and, you know, do kind of memorable holidays. They were kind of saying that we're a bit boring, that we go to the same place. We love that. I said this.
But that's what a lot of Irish families do.
Yeah, it's just, if it works, you know, if it works for you, and if it's what you like, and you know the run of the place, and it's safe, you know, when you're bringing children away, and you know, and it kind of suits your pocket as well. I can understand why. That's certainly what we have done. Certainly when the kids were coming up, we just go to the same place pretty much every year.
Do you go on 2 or 3 foreign holidays now, Mary Lou, or do you just go on the one?
We try and get away once. We're not going to be going anywhere this year. We'll be lucky now to. I'm just hoping that we'll get a nice summer, that we'll get a bit of sunshine. I think it'll make things so much more uplifting and that bit easier for people. We'd get away once a year, and then if I can, you know, from time to time I get away with my mum and with my sister, and you know, but I wouldn't be. I sometimes just chatting to people, you know, and particularly maybe people before they've settled down, and you know, if they're at work and they've a few bob in their pocket, they'll be hopping here for a weekend and hopping there. So, God, that's brilliant, you know, just to have that freedom to up and go. But I go away a little bit with work, not as much obviously as when I was in the European Parliament, but I'd be over to London, you know, a fair bit. I go to the States a couple of times a year. So I have a wee routine as well that's kind of work related travel.
Creature of habit, a little bit.
That's me.
And Mary Lou, I have to ask you this question, but do you ever get fed up of people attacking you over your political preference?
Well, yes, you can. Looking at it, if you were to take kind of the media presentation, you'd imagine, say, that woman is constantly, you know, in a battle, and, you know, it's a constant, you know, times saying, Jesus, that's something. That's not how life really is. Like, I mean, once you come out of the chamber of the Dáil, or, you know, a TV station where there's been, or a radio station where there's been a very intense exchange, that's not how real people actually engage with me. Like, I spend my time having very normal, calm, respectful conversations with wide swathes of people and sectors right across. So that's not, if you're at that pitch constantly, sure, you'd absolutely crack. And I also think, just to say, I think it's fair enough for you to be challenged. Like, that's how this works. Once you step into public life, you go forward for election and you set forward ideas and policies and all of that, not alone is it natural that you're going to be challenged, it's entirely appropriate. Like, that's how this has to work. So there's no issue with that, or people being critical or not liking your politics or thinking that you're wrong, or all of that's fine. I think the real problem that I have, and this has been my experience now for 2 decades, is when people reach for things that happened beyond me and in circumstances that were very difficult in the North in particular, and where there was a prolonged and very, very difficult conflict. It's not that I expect people not to have a view on that, or not to have a view on the conflict, or not to be critical of Republicans or of the IRA. I get that, people are, but not to recognise that there was many sides to this story. You could equally be as critical of the British Army, or loyalism, or loyalist paramilitaries, or of the Orange State itself and the injustice of partition. All of those conversations are okay, but to reach for the past and to reach for the North, to attack somebody now, or to divert attention from things in the here and now, in my view, is just wrong. When that happens, and it happens periodically, it happens a lot in elections, I say to myself, well, I really wonder are these people now who are having a go, is this really about how much they care about people in the north of Ireland or people who got hurt? Or is this actually just a wee political tactic just to have a go with you, you know? So I find that bit can be a bit trying, but look, it is what it is. And ultimately I respect everybody's right to have their view and to question me, to question anyone, to probe you and all of that. And I absolutely accept also, Emer, that, you know, not everybody is going to like you. You know, that's just life. And not everybody is going to like your politics. And I'm okay with that. That bit doesn't bother me, but I don't like opportunistic reaching for things that were lived by people in real time to just to have a go. And I think that happens. I think that happens quite a lot still, unfortunately, 20 years after Good Friday and all. I think that still happens in the Irish political discourse. And I really think at this stage, you'd have to question political figures who are still on that line of argument.
What about your colleague that shouted up the Ra after having beers? Whilst you have moved forward, you know, and you want to leave that behind you, you know, how did you feel that morning after you woke up and you heard it on the news? That must have been just mind-blowing for you, going, how could that have happened?
And in a way, I understand why that happened. I mean, it was a function, he was speaking amongst Republicans. I also understand that for lots of people to hear those words, it can make people feel like as though there's some kind of glorying in other people's pain. I totally understand that's what's problematic with saying those words. I also know that for another set of people, that's just it's just a Republican catch cry, and it could be as much about Michael Collins or Dev or whatever as about anything else. So I just think the more thoughtful course of action is to consider not just who you're talking to and how you understand things, but to actually understand also how that sounds in the ear of another person who could be hurt by that. So that was my thoughts. And to be honest with you, David put his hands up and he apologized for. He's a very, very good person. He's a brilliant TD. He's a great asset to Irish political life. And he made a mistake. I mean, he accepts that. So I didn't agonize too much beyond that. I believe if you make a mistake, you put up your hands and say, that was a mistake on my part. It was thoughtless. And he apologized for it. And as far as I'm concerned, I was happy with that because I know him and I know that he was sincere in that apology.
I just thought it was just that little bit unfortunate because I really felt that Sinn Féin made huge gains in the last election. And I really thought that things were moving forward. And I believe that they are moving forward.
Absolutely.
But I just thought that was, whilst he did apologise about it, I just thought it was a little bit regretful to hear that because I just thought to myself, come so far, but yet, but I understand that people make mistakes and they put up their hand and they say sorry and you get on with it and that's just it, The one thing though that I will ask you about is, how did you feel last week when Leo Varadkar called you two-faced?
Yeah, the context for this is important because I was asking him about the COVID-19 payment. And the reason I was asking him about that is because the Minister for Finance and other members of government were saying that they were going to cut this payment in June. Now, Miriam, all of us want to get back to work. Everybody needs to get back to work. Working people want to get back to work. Nobody wants to be on a COVID payment forever. But, in my view, it's just frankly wrong to say to hundreds of thousands of workers who have lost their jobs, some of whom have lost their shirt, who are worried, will they get back to work? How will they manage? How will they manage their children? What will the future hold? To start piling greater pressure on those people and their families, to my mind, was wrong. And I said that to them. They published an exit plan. And even according to their own plan, sure, everybody wasn't going to be back in work in June. So why do that? That was incoherent and wrong. And I also said to him, by the way, we're not going to have a rerun of what happened in the last decade where the banks and all the big rollers got through fine and were looked after, and people's services and supports and community supports were cut to ribbons. Like that's not acceptable. So that was the context of it. And of course that becomes then a clash of perspectives, because Sinn Féin and Fine Gael have very, very different views around who you support, who you prioritise, and how you go about that. I mean, it's a legitimate political argument. So I felt my points were political, and I thought his response was very personal. I'm not two-faced. So if anything, if people generally have a criticism of me, it might be that I'm too direct rather than being in any way two-faced or duplicitous. So I think it was just, maybe he was tired, in fairness. He was certainly very defensive, but so I didn't think too much about it. I mean, it happened. I thought it was a bit contemptuous, and I was more upset actually at the fact that he was sneering at people who were going and doing community things. You know, I just thought, like, what's that? You know, he said Sinn Féin ministers handing out food parcels. Deirdre Hargy, one of my colleagues, is the Minister for Communities in the North, and she has this brilliant scheme where it's like care packages and food parcels for not the poor, as the Taoiseach said, but people living in the community, might be on low income, or people who are cocooning, or senior citizens. And it's kind of an additional layer to what's happening anyway through GA clubs and so on. And it's a good thing to do. And like, it's not just Sinn Féin people, it's SDLP people and UUP people.
And it's happening in Scotland as well.
And in Scotland, I think that's a good thing to do. Like, I take the view, if you do a good thing, I don't care who you are, you know, fair play. I wouldn't sneer at that. I think that's a good. So I was a bit puzzled by that. I'm going to put it down to the fact that perhaps he was tired and emotional. That's not a way, in my view, for the Taoiseach and the head of government to speak to, by all means, argue the political point, but to start calling people names, I just think you've lost the argument if you go with things that way.
When you were speaking there about the COVID payment, it's a very valid point, and there's a lot of worry and there's a lot of stress out there. The payment and subsidiary payment will be reviewed on the 6th of June, according to the Minister of Finance, that he stated today on RT. But what do you think should happen after this?
Well, I think they need to be extended. I mean, the income support scheme, you know, we're not unique in introducing that here. I mean, the one in Britain that also takes in the North, that's being extended now out to October. And the reason for that is not because people want to forever and ever be on this scheme, but it's just there's a reality. We have to put the economy to sleep overnight. People, it's not like you could see it coming that the job was in trouble, or overnight the rug pulled from under you. You don't come back to work. We had said to government, they had planned everything on the basis of a 12-week timeline. And from the very word go, Piers Doherty, our finance person, said to Pascal and others, 12 weeks is too short. At a minimum, you need to plan for 20 weeks. And thereafter, we have to support people as we reboot and we reawaken the economy, which is going to be a gradual thing. So I just think it's completely wrong to start causing that level of stress, because you see people here, and the Taoiseach, by the way, you asked about the argument, at the end there, he said, anyway, we're not cutting or ending the payment. And yet still, even after that exchange, they're still coming out saying, well, we're going to review it and we're talking about tapering it. So I just think that causes anxiety unnecessarily, because the reality is that we are going to have to support workers and their families to get through this period, to get back to work. And we're going to have to support businesses too. There's no way around that. And we're not unique in that. This is the reality continent-wide and global.
And the country's restart after COVID-19 will be devastating on small to medium-sized businesses. There's no doubt about that. And many business owners believe out there that the $2,500 voucher scheme and the zero interest loans isn't enough to restart themselves. What solutions can maybe a government come up with to help those small businesses? Because, I suppose, be under no illusion, I'm in that bracket myself. I know how hard it is. I'm questioning whether or not I can restart my own business and get going again.
Sure. And there are countless people in exactly the same boat. Some people who who are recent startups, who are just getting pace in their legs and just getting established. Other businesses that have been grown and developed over generations. So that's where we're at. I think we need to understand that there's a number of things that are going to be needed. One is, as they say, liquidity. It's about cash flow. So to that end, loans are one thing, but we believe that there needs to be grant-aided supports for businesses. And in the North, Conor Murphy, who's our finance minister there, has a scheme for small and medium-sized enterprises where you can get grant-aided up to £10,000 for businesses up to a certain scale and size, then up to £20,000 for businesses that are slightly bigger. He has set aside for the 6 counties more by way of grant aid than has been set aside down here. So there's a clear impact. We're going to have to grant aid. We're going to have to put money into the pockets of small and medium-sized businesses. We're then going to have to look at everything from rates to VAT, the whole selection of these measures, and figure out generally, but then also in sector-specific approaches, what is the best way to support businesses. The issue here of loan deferral by the banks, but where they might still insist that that interest is paid, isn't any good to either a domestic mortgage holder or anywhere else. That needs to be dealt with. And then I think it is absolutely imperative, with the new restrictions that are going to be in place, and bear in mind on Monday, in every likelihood, construction is back. So you've people back working on sites, and there's going to be a big job to keep people safe there. But that's going to be reflected in businesses up and down the country. And people are going to need assistance with that, and not just advice and guidelines. In some cases, that is going to have to be resourced as well. So it's a big job. I'm not pretending for a second that this ship can be turned overnight. It can't be. We're going to have to be really, really efficient in terms of identifying and drawing down funding streams at a European level. I think we need to build in this whole green economy and that new, piece into our recovery plans, and maximise on that. And above all else, we're going to have to work together on this. So for my money, every arm of the state now and every agency of the state has to muster everything it has to support small and medium-sized enterprise and business, because bear in mind, and you'll know this, they are the businesses that are the big employers in our economy, and indeed across Europe. So, and I know myself, because I've spoken to so many people who are either in the restaurant business or, food production or service provision, who have cried bitter tears as their businesses just stopped overnight. The good news, though, is this, that those were viable businesses. Do you know what I mean? Those were absolutely viable business. So the task at hand is to rebuild market share, to take advantage of pent-up demand.
The biggest worry is, though, especially within the hospitality sector, if they're down to a quarter of their previous capacity and they don't have the volume of customers, if they were struggling even up until then, which many businesses within hospitality sector suffer, how on earth are they going to try and make this work? The numbers just are not going to work.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. I'm not disputing that for a second. And I know that many of the representative bodies have come forward with their best plans as to how we might do that. I think the first thing that we need to do for the hospitality sector is to establish how you reopen safely and when you can do that. Because in the absence of that, everything else that you might propose to do is purely academic. I mean, there are ways in which the interventions can be made now, but the biggest intervention is to actually get to a stage where you can open your doors again. And that is incredibly difficult. And in fairness, irrespective of who might be in government, the reality is that will be led and guided by the public health advice. That's the way it has to be. And it's tremendously difficult. So the more disciplined that we are, each of us in our own lives, in terms of abiding by the rules, from everything as simple as the hand hygiene and all of that, the distancing, and the more disciplined we are, actually, the easier the pathway will be to get to the point where you can have actually a hospitality sector to speak of, that can actually resume business.
And obviously it's something that none of us have ever encountered in our lifetimes. So it's a brand new thing as well to deal with.
Which of us three would have thought for a second, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, that we would be sitting here having this Zoom conversation, and that it would be in a context where you couldn't go 5 kilometers away from your home. I mean, these are extraordinary times. These are unprecedented times, and therefore the response to them in a public health sense has been extraordinary. I mean, in ordinary circumstances, if the state had attempted to limit our personal liberties in this way, we would be up in arms. It just couldn't happen. So equally then, when business resumes and people go back to work, and businesses and business owners try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, the state also has to respond in unprecedented ways, and has to think what they might have said before was the unthinkable, that you can't do this and you can't. We're going to have to do what's necessary. That's the truth, to actually get our economy back up and running, get people back to work, and to revive businesses. But they're going to look very, very different from before. And you're right, Emer. I mean, that whole issue of what does an Irish pub look like in a post-COVID world? I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that, is the God's honest truth.
I don't think anybody does, but I really thought, though, at this stage we would have been further along the road in terms of our planning, our exit strategy out of this. And my concern is that people are at home worried that they're going to have to let their staff go once the subsidiary payment is stopped. Beyond that then is, where did they get the cash to keep going? Because I have had a barrage of phone calls from my clients saying, yeah, Emer, we want to come back on, we want to do this, we want to do that, but at a reduced rate. I can't afford that reduced rate. If I'm just me in my small little company that employs a few people, what are the other companies like? I know we don't have the answers here today, but I really just thought we would have been further down the road in terms of people putting their heads together and trying to find some type of a solution, as opposed to €2,500 vouchers so you can go and get advice from somebody how to run your business, or go and get a website built. That's just irrelevant to the situation.
The first task when this emergency struck was to ensure that we did everything we can to flatten that curve, as we all know, and to protect our health services, to ensure that they weren't overwhelmed. And I mean, I absolutely understand that was item number one on all of our lists. We're now many weeks down the line, and I would have some criticisms about how things have been handled. I don't want to make a big song and dance about that, but let me just say out loud, yes, mistakes were made. They're done now. We need to get things right. As far as I am concerned, now is the time for the very detailed consultation and planning to happen now. So on everything from the concerns that you have, Emer, around small and medium-sized enterprise, from the concerns that people have around when the schools open and how do schools open, the concerns around how does childcare and early education open and what does that look like. There's a huge amount of planning, practical, physical planning that needs to be done now. And we can't have a repeat of what we had, for example, with the childcare scheme for frontline workers. It was announced on a Thursday. It collapsed the following Wednesday. We can't have that. So what we need now is very, very thoughtful, and we need an awful lot of collaboration and consultation. So certainly if I were in government, if I were in charge, I would be making absolutely sure that those kind of connections and those conversations were happening, because it's no good to any of us if we think, and it's signposted, oh, great, we're going to reopen A, B, or C, and then at the 11th hour, we discover, well, actually, no, it can't happen. Or worse still, you go ahead, you open up sections of the economy, the virus spikes again out of control, and you're into the worst case scenario where you have to put emergency measures back in place again. I mean, that would be a disaster. So that's where I think we are now. We're in that very, very detailed preparation and planning. And then we need to keep an eye on what Dr. Holohan has to say and what our ICU numbers are, hospital admissions, rates of confirmed cases, and getting the testing and all of that stuff right. But the planning needs to happen. All of this is going to be tricky. Like, even if you solve the cash flow issues and solved all of those, which are big, there needs to be big planning around that. There's even just the physically, what does your business look like physically, and how does all of that take over? I know in cafes and restaurants around Cabra, Phibsborough, into the city, the big question mark is, if we have to physically distance, how many people can we have in? Is that viable? Like, can we actually pay our bills and run our business on that basis? So it's enormously challenging.
I think about all those employees as well, that from Facebook and Google and so on, those big multinationals have been told, like, they may not have to come into the office for the rest of 2020. And then I think about my colleagues and friends and my own neighbourhood restaurants in Ringsend. And I think about, well, where are they going to get their income from? Look, this is an enormous task. It's coming at whoever will be in government long term, left, right and centre. It's just going to be a tsunami of issues. And that is the fact, unfortunately. But I just want to get on to a couple of our listener questions for you. If Sinn Féin were in power right now, how would you deal with the housing rents once the rent freeze expires?
We argued for a rent freeze throughout the election, as people know, because the rents had just gone totally out of control, and it wasn't just a Dublin phenomenon. This was statewide. So we argued for it then. It was necessary then, long before COVID struck, and we believe that it'll be necessary thereafter. Some people are just making an assumption that rents will naturally fall post-COVID. Just be careful. There's no certainty about that at all. The whole supply and demand chain in the housing market will certainly be affected by COVID. But it would be a dangerous assumption to assume that rents will just naturally fall off. So we need proper rent control. And I mean, we debated this for a long time. We need security of tenure. We need to completely recast the rental model in Ireland, so that we match more closely what happens in other parts of the world, where people can rent securely for their lifetime, actually, and know that they have a secure roof over their head. We need to build supply. We still need, COVID or no COVID, we still need the largest public housing programme in the history of the state, and we need affordable housing. That needs to happen. So we need construction back, safe construction work back, up and at it. But yeah, the rent freeze was something, by the way, we were told was constitutionally impossible, unconstitutional. It wasn't then, and it isn't now. And those who made that argument changed their mind very quickly when the circumstances changed.
And what's your opinion about banning Airbnb in our large cities?
Yeah, well, I've been of that view for quite some time. And we'd had a number of conversations with people about banning Airbnb, particularly in Dublin. So yes, I think we need to secure people's ability to house themselves. People who are working in the city, people who currently are locked out of the market. And we also now, particularly in these times, need to look to our hospitality sector and to supporting other sections that can provide accommodation for people who are coming and going and want to spend a weekend or a long weekend in Dublin or Cork or Limerick or wherever else.
And what's your opinion on the flat complexes? So in the 50s and 60s and 70s, there's a lot of flat complexes all around Dublin and further afield, Galway, and then the council estates all around this country. Was there anything necessarily wrong with them back then? And is that not a solution that we could potentially look at for 2020?
Well, absolutely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them then, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them now, except for the fact that very many of them are old. I mean, in the constituency that I represent, we have any number of big flat complexes, and many of them just need complete retrofitting. You know, we need complete regeneration and renewal of these flat complexes. By the way, there's a recognition of that at Dublin City Council level, so that's all about investment. But no, I mean, to live in apartments or flats, there's nothing wrong with that at all, with the proviso that you have the proper social and leisure facilities, so parks, that you have green spaces, that you have places for children to play, for people to go for a walk, and that you have the right social infrastructure around you. It's all about kind of your entire environment. So it's not about just necessarily, is it a house, is it an apartment, is it a flat? It's about where you live. It's about your wider neighbourhood as well. So there's nothing wrong with them at all. I dearly wish that we could have a scheme to completely revamp and refurbish our big blocks of flats across the city. I mean, Ballybock House, the flats at Kevin Barry House. I mean, I could name them all. They all need serious regrading, and not least because all of the effort now is around reducing emissions and being energy efficient and everything. These are great flat complexes, but they're of their time, and we now need to intervene and regenerate them.
The current government seems to be against putting people who are in need of accommodation in one area, like what they used to do back in the 50s and 60s. I, for one, have witnessed amazing community in Camaraderie as a result of COVID-19 in Ringsend, and all the magnificent fundraising that they've done is phenomenal, and the balcony bingo. And I've never seen a community come together as much. And I don't think personally there's anything wrong with that. What I do think what's wrong is that this is actually currently happening under the existing establishment, because there are developments going up all around the city of Dublin, and I'm sure further afield, which is it is their obligation to put in 10% of social housing into that property. But yet there are deals done with Dublin City Council to house those people elsewhere, so that they're still adhering and complying with the 10%, but they're putting them into a different apartment block, and all people of social disadvantage, let's say, for one way or for one reason or another, are being housed there. And I'll tell you an example, because this is what really annoys me. I'm living in one of those apartment blocks, and there's only two private tenants, myself and another neighbour on the fifth floor. And all the rest of them are social housing. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my neighbours. I have no issue with them. Now, I probably have a bit of an issue in terms of the social inequality that's going on. I'm paying $2,500 per month, and they're paying whatever, €600 a month. But besides that, because that's there's a reason why it is social housing, and I totally understand and get that. It's going on already. Why can't we just build big apartment blocks? Or why can't we have a Vienna model where people pay in accordance to what they earn?
Absolutely. Well, I think you might have hit the nail on the head there, with your last point. In other places in the world, the assumption is not that social housing is just for low income people. Do you know what I mean? Social housing is accessible to everyone, and then of course your rents are differential based on your means and so on. You see, there's room for that. There's room also for private house development, and you know what I mean. We're not trying to make the entire housing scenario and market conform to one single model. I mean, that doesn't have to happen. But what does have to happen is we need to up our capacities in delivering public housing. And we need to kind of throw out a lot of the old taboos that people have had around who is or who isn't in social housing, and who should have access and who shouldn't. And by the way, nobody gets housing for free. Nobody's housed for free. You sometimes hear this, that people getting free houses. Nobody gets a free house. I mean, if you're in any form of accommodation, you're paying rent for it, which is correct. That's exactly as it should be. The issue here, the core problem is this, that for the last decades, successive governments, whether they were Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, essentially decided that the market knew best and that the private market would sort out housing. And it didn't. That failed. In fact, the private market, along with cheap money and credit in the banks, and inflated this massive property bubble that blew up and left us all in a right mess. So we now need an entirely different approach. And that's a change of philosophy and thought, as well as the practical policy of it. So public lands need to be used to deliver public housing. That's it. We need to build houses and apartments and maisonettes and whatever other bijou, whatever kind of terms we use to describe safe shelter and accommodation for our citizens. And it's not like, I mean, I live in Cabra, and this is a very proud working class neighbourhood. These houses were built, a lot of people, from the inner city came out and settled in Cabra. They were local authority, council, corporation houses. So lots of people have bought them subsequently. They're brilliant houses. They're as sturdy houses as you could find. The best of people were raised and grew up in communities like Cabra and Finglas and Crumlin and Ballyfermot. And so I'm a fan of integration. I don't like a society that's very stratified between, a kind of very rigid class-based society. I think we're better than that, but I don't think either that there is any problem whatsoever around building what's called social or public housing. That's the state needs to do that, and you shouldn't just assume that you can only do that for people who are on very, very low incomes. In fact, you can cater for a much wider population.
It's really interesting. I could talk to you all day about policies and which should be implemented according to Emer McCormack, but
Emer, I think you're looking for my job.
No, you're all right. Definitely wouldn't want that. So, Mary Lou, are you actively currently right now looking to form a government yourself?
Yes, we haven't given up at all. It is.
I'm looking for the scoop here now, Mary Lou.
Well, the scoop is this, that, I mean, even as the votes were being counted, I was contacting people and saying, we need to talk. I mean, obviously it was a very seismic election. People voted for change, and not in some abstract pie in the sky way, but in terms of housing, just as we've discussed, in terms of the health service, all of those things. And I am very clear that people voted for us to be in government, and we will continue to do everything that we can to bring that about. Others have decided that they won't speak to us. And brag openly that they will keep us out. So we'll see about that.
How does that make you feel?
Well, I think it doesn't make me, I mean, I don't take any of that personally, but it makes me very, very angry on behalf of the people who vote for us. It's 500,000 people in the last election in this state chose Sinn Féin. They're grown-up, adult, intelligent people who, with their eyes wide open, said, yes, this is our party of choice. These are the people that we want to represent us. And I think it is entirely wrong for political parties, the old establishment, to band together and to brag that they are going to exclude, not us, but to exclude that section of people. As a matter of fact, I think it's a very, very bizarre and disgraceful position for people who would have you believe that they are the poster boys of democratic values. I mean, I think it's an extraordinary thing to brag that not alone that you're not going to go into government, but that you're not even going to discuss a particular section of the people and their representatives are to be excluded even from a discussion of government is an astonishing thing.
Do you regret not running more candidates around the country?
Yes. Yes. So had I seen what was coming, obviously, and hindsight is a great thing. Had I seen what was coming, obviously, yeah, we would have run more candidates. We could have won more seats. So the answer is yes, and we'll be ready next time. And what we need to do is, and what we are doing is continuing contact with other parties. We haven't given up at all. I mean, this story isn't over yet. But in any event, I'm very clear in my own mind that those who wish to stop change and to frustrate the changes that we are championing and advancing, they may delay us, but they're not going to stop this change, because it's much bigger than Sinn Féin. This isn't just about Sinn Féin. This is about something something much bigger than us and way beyond us. And we discovered in the course of the last election campaign, not for the first time, that the people were way ahead of the system in terms of their analysis and what they actually wanted next for their country.
Would your party be against the idea of, say, a super coalition, like, say, the likes of Germany, which I think the Taoiseach looks up to someone like Angela Merkel and her politics and how she runs her country? They've got three of their biggest parties all in a coalition. Do you think that would be something that you'd consider?
We have considered everything, and we've spoken to everybody who wishes to speak to us. And actually, those conversations and pieces of work that have been done, I think, have been really, really constructive and very, very helpful in finding very considerable common ground. There was a proposal made in respect of a unity government or a national government, some people were calling it. And although I wasn't sure exactly how that would work, or how exactly that would be put together, or I think every idea and proposal that's sincerely made in good faith needs to be given a fair wind and needs to be considered. I think the best kind of government would be one in which Sinn Féin and others that were elected on a very similar platform, not identical, very broadly similar platform for progress and change, that bloc would be, the core of a new government, the spine even of a new administration, because irrespective of what Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael's framework document says, there's nobody really believes that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together represent anything new. Do you know what I mean? Or that really credibly that it's a government for change. But I think Sinn Féin and others that were elected on that platform, I mean, that's our politics. That's our philosophy.
Do you have the numbers though, Mary Lou, in order to make it work?
We don't, is the answer. The problem, all of the problem here is numbers. It's a problem of maths, but that's not just a problem for us as we speak, or that's a problem for everyone. The maths don't work for everyone, or anyone, I should say. So Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are talking. The Greens are now in talking with them, and the Greens have a big call to make, and it'll be their call to make. But be in no doubt that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together, that is not change. That's the same. It's more of the same that we had for the last 4 years and longer.
And do you think that the management of COVID-19 has helped the Fine Gael brand?
Undoubtedly, yes. And I think whoever would be in government and leading the national effort at this time naturally would need and would expect the support of people. You see, people are decent, and we're in the middle of a crisis. And of course, people want those in authority and decision making to succeed and to make the right calls, because you're relying on them to do that. So I'm not surprised at all. In fact, internationally, the experience has been that populations have kind of rallied to the flag and rallied to whoever it is in government. So I think that's natural. That's natural enough. What that means in the long term, I don't know. What I do know is that we have to make sure that the lessons that need to be learned are learned. For example, in our health service, we came into this crisis in a very vulnerable position. Waiting lists, trolley counts, all of that. I mean, that's not acceptable into the future, because I think it becomes very clear for people that that's an issue for all of society, because it leaves all of us vulnerable. Any of us is safe. We're only safe if all of us are safe.
If you were to go into government right now and form a government, that you're drinking out of a poison chalice because of all of the issues that are coming at you.
Well, no, I mean, you could always make that argument. I mean, it's being in government and making big decisions and carrying that level of responsibility is never going to be easy. Like the nature of that is that you carry huge responsibility, because you are shaping things that have direct effects on people's lives, profound and long-term effects. So no, of course it's not going to be easy. If you're asking me, would I like to be in government now? Absolutely. I want us to be in government. I don't want us to be in a position where we are on the opposition benches arguing for the right way. I want us to be in government delivering that.
I was just going to ask, you're in the Dáil chamber and you're debating, and it can get heated, and people are throwing insults back and forth. And once all the cameras are turned off and you're done for the day, are you all best mates?
I wouldn't say best mates, but I mean, there's a professional courtesy, and with some people the friendliness. It very much depends. We're all people. There's 160 of us, and people are people. So it's not. I mean, you get the odd person who perhaps is persistently hostile, or who wouldn't win Personality of the Year awards, but for the most part, people are just a mix of people, and they're doing their job, and it's by no means kind of like a very hostile environment from that point of view. But I don't think you'd describe it as best mates. Well, certainly not for me. I wouldn't be into that kind of clubby, backslapping, and it is, and I suppose it's fair to say also for women in that scenario. I mean, we're doing a bit better than we used to do in terms of balance and mix, but we're still not there by a long shot. So,
what do you think that you could do to improve that?
I think the main thing that those of us who are in leadership and who are already elected is to make plenty of space for more women. Don't pull the ladder up with you. Bring others with you. I'm a huge believer in that, in sharing your time, your experiences, encouraging people. I think that is so important. They say that you can't be it if you can't see it. So it's very important for other women, for girls, for our daughters as they're coming along to see politics as female and not just pinstripe suit blokes. That's, I think, the best thing that we can do, and be good at your job. Do what you do honestly, with integrity, to the very best of your ability. Love what you do and be yourself. Be a woman in your job. Be your person in your skin. I think that's what gives people confidence and brings an authenticity to the work that you do that I would hope other people can connect with. I remember, very often when I was, a long time ago, you'd be at this job and you'd meet people. I remember meeting one elderly man, he said to me, Jesus, he said, you're an awful woman. I was like there was a time when I joined, he said, excuse me, I'm not awful. I'm actually a very nice person. But until it clicked with me that actually that was the highest compliment that could be passed to you. So now when someone says to me, Jay, you're an awful woman, I say, you have no idea how awful I am. You have to, that for me is that politics is for everybody. We live in a democracy. This is a republic in the making, albeit, and every citizen is equal, and everybody needs to understand that there's room for them. If this is what you choose, if this is what you want to participate in, be part of, make your life in and make your lifelong contribution, that there's no right or wrong way to look or to sound. You are a citizen, you are a person, with views and ideas, and that qualifies you for politics. And women really need to get that, and we need to assist each other and bring out the best in each other and challenge each other too, because women are really, really good at politics, by the way.
But even a posh woman like you, Mary Lou.
Especially the posh, especially the posh South side.
So if somebody was listening out there and they wanted to get involved in politics, what would you recommend their first step to be?
I would say look to yourself and just decide. Everybody is driven by not just ideas and policies, but by values and by your worldview, like about how you interpret and understand the world, like what matters, what's the thing that really, drives you or inspires you. What's your thing? For some people it is, and for a lot of younger citizens, it's very much around climate justice and all of that. For lots of us, it's that, but it's social justice, it's equality, it's all of those things. So really understand your own political vantage point, and then look at your community, look at the people around you, look at your own family. Ask yourself the questions, don't look at how things are, but imagine how things can be, and then figure out how you get from A to B. And then in joining a political party, understand the party that you're joining, not just in terms of the personalities up front, but like what they really, really stand for. And that was really important for me. That's why Sinn Féin is the party for me, because for me, it is absolutely essential. Two things are absolute essentials. One is social justice, economic justice, in all of its facets. And the second thing is national democracy and an end to partition. Those are the things that drive me. That's who I am. That's what I believe in. So I would encourage women, men, women in particular, really connect with that, because it's a very, very powerful thing. People can change the world, Small numbers of people can change the world. They always have. It's always been small numbers of people who have lit the spark for things. And I want our generation to light our sparks and to write our chapter and to make our history. And women have to be in the middle of that. Men too. I mean, I love men too. I married one.
That's it. I'm quitting business and I'm going into politics.
Great. I knew I'd talk you.
Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure you have
too.
as well.
Lovely to see Emer and Tony. Look after yourselves. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
So, Tony, that was Mary Lou McDonald. What did you make of the interview?
I thought it was very informative. And one point that I got from it, working in radio stations for many, many years, you see a lot of politicians come in and out the doors. During the interviews, you'll find who is in government, who isn't in government by the way they answer questions. My point being that I find if you're in government, you tend to do the roundabout answers, the typical kind of a politician's answer. Whereas if you're on the campaign trail or you're not in government, you seem to give a more direct answer. And I found that she gave, she answered the questions that were asked.
So you felt that she was very direct in her answering?
Yeah. Is honest the right word to use?
Overall, I thought it was quite informative. I learned a lot about Mary Lou McDonald. I enjoyed it. I thought...
Oh, you could tell. I had 7 pages of questions to ask. Did I get to answer? No.
Yeah. You could have interjected at any time, Tony. Any time.
No, to be fair, I think you were very comfortable in that situation.
I am. Look, I really like politics, I like business, I like all of those kind of subjects areas. And I was particularly interested in her take with COVID-19 and the aftermath and what potentially she could do in government as the future Taoiseach, if she will be or not. I was really interested in that, probably from a personal point of view, but I know that a lot of my friends who are business people also might be interested in that. So, I was interested in her entire take on that. Apart from that, I would say really enjoyed it. And actually, I got a message from one of my friends who listened to one of the promos for the show and said, is it just me or is there a similarity between Mary Lou McDonald and Emer McCormack? And I was like...
They are the same person.
I was laughing because I was thinking to myself, my mother would actually be so proud after all of those years of spending a huge amount of money on speech and drama, that the fact that my articulation and my enunciation is quite good. So I just thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, mine came naturally though.
Well, yeah. Aren't you great, Tony?
Politics, business, all of that sort of thing. They're definitely your strong suits. And I did not have 7 pages of questions sitting there waiting. This was your spotlight moment to shine as a journalist of the political field.
I'm not so sure about that now, Tony, but I just enjoyed chatting to her on a personal level. And, you know, I mean, there was a couple of honest questions put in there as well, where she was going off on a tangent about how wonderful her party her party is, and then to be pulled back and kind of say, maybe not so perfect, you know, but which party is perfect.
And I don't think there is a perfect party out there.
No, I don't think there is. And I think, look, the recent election results as well kind of proves that people do want change, no matter whoever gets the job. It is a poison chalice, because there's so much taxation coming down the road for us. We have to pay back this money, as well as the previous money that we borrowed from the IMF back in the day for our last recession. So I really just don't think that many political parties out there can really, really make a difference to both you and I, Tony. You know, I think that the writing is on the wall with this particular one. Whoever is going to get in, it's going to be very, very tough.
I think, and I hope, whoever does end up in government, that they pick the right people for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you've got a bone to pick there, Tony. What's going on?
I don't.
We're a month into the Kish podcast now, which is amazing, and our figures are absolutely amazing. Never thought that we would get the amount of listens that we have had right from the very, very start, and also attracted the amazing caliber we have also done.
And we have to thank a lot of people behind the scenes as well. It's not just us.
Absolutely.
You know, we have to thank our marketing company, Be Different. They've been amazing.
Outstanding. www.bedifferent.ie for all your marketing needs. But seriously, a lot of people have helped out, and you know, we've got lots of really interesting people coming up in various different fields. We've Pat Phelan, who is involved in business in this country, very well known entrepreneur and respected entrepreneur. Yeah, we've got David Gilna, who is was about to do some amazing things in the theatre world on Broadway, and he's got a very interesting story. He was struck by lightning. So we find out exactly how the boy who almost died became quite big in the acting field. We've got a lot more people as well lined up after that. So, if you want to suggest somebody as well, just hop onto our website, thekishpodcast.com, and go to the contact us page and put in comments in there, and we'd be happy to have a chat. But we have lots of different people coming up soon. So if you want to get in touch with us on the Kish Podcast, of course, you can go to our website, thekishpodcast.com. Yes, or you can find us on Instagram or anything else online that allows us to have a platform. All you have to do is search the Kish Podcast. That's KISH. Join us again next week for another edition of the Kish Podcast. Thanks very much, Tony. Chat to you next week. Bye-bye.